Hey, today we're going to talk about 5 physical distractions that preachers have that really take away from the message. These are 5 things that sometimes I do, or sometimes maybe you do, that really distract from our message. And so we're going to talk about that today. This is Preaching Donkey. My name is Lane. Be sure to subscribe, and let's get into the 5 things that preachers do that are distracting. Number 1, turning your back to look at the screen. Turning your back to your audience to read from the screen. What this looks like typically is this. The preacher will be preaching and he'll want to refer to notes. And so rather than having like a monitor that's right next to you, like I have a TV on stage, it's a large TV that's right next to me that I can just point to and say, look right here. And rather than something like that, they say, oh, it's back here. See, if you'll read with me on the screen. Now, let's see. We're going to read from 1 Corinthians, whatever. And so it's up there on the screen. And here's the view that everybody gets. It's really like nobody wants to see that. And it's a way to lose engagement with the audience. And so my suggestion is never, ever, ever turn your back on your audience to read from the screen or really to do anything else unless it's for illustrative purposes, like what I just did, illustrating that you should not do that. So maybe you have an illustration that involves turning around for some reason and you're going to make it clear that that's what you're doing, then that's fine. I would say in any other situation, avoid it altogether because it's just not worth doing. Because every time you turn around or you lose eye contact or you move in some other direction that disengages with your audience, it removes you from your audience, it gives them just another reason to move away and do something different other than pay attention to you. It just gives them the reason to pull their phone out and look at it instead. It gives them a reason to daydream, and so you want to stay engaged. When you turn your back, you lose that engagement, which is not what you want. Number 2, using filler words or what's called vocalized pauses. Now you might say, what is that? Well, it's basically when we fill in the pauses of our speech with words like and that kind of just, we don't know what we're going to say next, so we kind of fill the pause with and it can be very, very distracting. For one thing, it's just an unpolished presentation. If you're going to speak, if you're going to preach with any regularity, you need to unlearn this tendency. And there's a few reasons why we do it from a communications perspective. The first reason why we do it is because typically we're used to speaking in conversation. And in conversation, when we're talking with someone else, we think that they're going to interrupt us subconsciously. It's not like we're thinking this out, aware. See, I just did it there. I was trying to think of what I was going to say next. But we think of it subconsciously, and so we want to fill the space. We want to fill the pause with something to kind of signal to the other person, I'm still talking, don't interrupt me. So we'll say things like, and we do that to try to make sure that space doesn't get taken away from us. But in a public speaking situation, it's usually a monologue. Nobody's really interrupting you most of the time unless you ask for it. So you don't really need to fill that space. Not to mention the fact that a good, well-placed pause is a very good tool in speaking. And so you want to avoid that habit, that distraction of filling the space with words like it just doesn't work. Now, you're never going to get there 100%. It's not possible. I've never seen anyone who 100%, if you look at tons of sermons, they never do it. But you can really, really reduce it with good preparation and making sure that you're thinking about it and you're working to take them out of your speech entirely, not just when you speak, but every time in any conversation, you're working to get rid of vocalized pauses because you don't need them. They just sound see, I just did it there. They don't sound good. I'll say that. They sound like you aren't 100% sure. You're not confident of what you're saying. And when you preach, you want confidence. Okay, not pride and arrogance, but confidence. You want to be very sure of what you're saying, because if you're hesitant, then it's harder for people to grasp onto what you're saying and believe it as well. Number 3, and this is perhaps my biggest, most fun one to talk about, and it's aimlessly pacing back and forth on stage, okay? When you're speaking, when you're preaching, It is 100% better to stay in one place as far as putting your feet, planting them in one place. It's 100% better to be in one place than to aimlessly pace back and forth with no real rhyme or reason. I see some speakers, and this is basically what they look like. They just, the whole time is just this exercise in, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go forth, and I'm going to go back, and it's doing some weird things with my lights right now, but it's just, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go forth, and it makes no sense, and no one connects with that. In the same way that you're just like, okay, you got to stop doing that, okay? Even in this video, it's better for me to stay in one place and continue to make eye contact with you than it is for me to pace back and forth, even if it makes me feel good to get some movement, okay? So what I would suggest is, it's not stage movement that's bad, it's aimless pacing that's unhelpful. So if you're aimlessly pacing, I was a communication major in college. I had a lot of classes where I had to give presentations and speeches. Some of my favorite speakers were very movement oriented. I was really big into Craig Rochelle back in those days, and he moved a lot, and I didn't know that his movements were very purposeful. I didn't know that. I'm still into him. I think he's a great speaker, but his movements were very purposeful. I just looked at it and thought, hey, he moves a lot, seems to be very effective. I'll move. And I had one of my professors say, Lane, just stay in one place. You're not helping by moving around all the time. And so what I would suggest is move around with your eyes, scan the room, make eye contact, not aimlessly pacing with your eyes, but look at this person and look at that person and look over here and look up there, and make sure that people know that you're connecting. You're not just looking straight ahead like kind of just a drone. You're looking and you're making eye contact with lots of different people. You're moving with your gestures and your hands. If you have big things to say, you make big gestures. If you want to bring a point in really tight, you bring in your gestures really tight. There's different things you can do without ever really moving, okay? You don't want to be just a stiff where you never have any movement at all. You want it to fit the movement. You want it to fit the mood of the message at the time. If it's active and it's exciting, then move a little bit. If it's serious and you want to bring people in, then let your body and your movement show that. The aim is to make sure that what you're saying is matching how you're moving, and just aimless pacing back and forth, it doesn't accomplish that. One way to figure out if you're doing this in your preaching is watch your video of you preaching and turn the sound off, and then kind of scrub through it, like speed it up, and watch yourself, like, are you going like this? You just this way, this way, this way. And if you speed it up and turn the sound off or whatever, or just turn the sound off and watch it, you'll see your movements with more clarity. And if you just speed it up, you'll be able to see, like, okay, I go over here, then I go over here, then I go over here, then I go over here, and you'll be able to see if that's better. The other thing you don't want to do, and I'll just mention this, it's one thing to aimlessly pace back and forth across the stage. It's just as bad to rock back and forth. You don't want to do that either. So if you're one of these people who do this all the time, where you're just kind of, hey everybody, it doesn't look professional. It doesn't look like you've got your stuff together. It doesn't look like you're confident. It doesn't really command the room. You just want to avoid those. Number 4, constantly adjusting the head-worn mic that's attached to your face. Most preachers these days, we wear a little mic that goes around our ear, and then it has a little like thing that comes down to about right here. And so you can't really see it unless you're really looking for it. But it comes down, it sticks out about like that, and that's what picks up your voice. So it wraps around your ear, and then it has a cord that goes down, and it goes down your shirt and connects to a pack that connects wirelessly to the system. So a lot of preachers use this method now. It's called a Countryman is the brand. It's very common. I'll link to one in the description. If you've never seen it, you can just look at it and know what I'm talking about. A very common thing that happens is the cord that goes down your shirt, which, by the way, I'll just say this, run the cord down your shirt, like under your jacket if you're wearing a jacket, or under your shirt if you're wearing a shirt. Do not run it exposed behind you. It just doesn't look like I just don't like the way it looks. I think it looks much cleaner and sharper if you hide the cord under your shirt or under your jacket, just as an aside. But here's what happens. The cord is back there, and so it tugs. And so constantly you're pulling on the cord itself, right? And so you're making a point, you're, pulling on it, pulling on it, and pulling it goes down a little bit, pulling it again, it goes down a little bit. It's very distracting. The other thing is you're messing with the cord that goes around your ear, and so you're messing with it, trying to get it to adjust. Do all that beforehand. Attach it to your shirt or to your collar with a clip so that the cord doesn't go down. Make sure that the adjustment is good. Do a sound check. Make sure that everything is good, and then don't touch it when you're up there. It's just very distracting, and it doesn't, it just doesn't work. If you're using a handheld mic, then there's ways that you can be distracting with a handheld mic, but it's way easier for me to demonstrate that with a mic in my hand. So I'll do another video on that where I'll talk about mics, and I'll actually have a countryman and a handheld, and we'll talk about that. And that brings us to distraction number 5, which is when you don't fully articulate words or finish sentences. Now, here's the thing that is just what you have to understand about public speaking. It's different than conversational speaking. When you're on stage and you're speaking to a group of people, the number one thing that you want is for them to understand what you're saying. If they don't understand what you're saying, then you can't really communicate meaning to them. You can't really communicate the message to them. Okay, the message is where the power is. You're preaching for life change. You want people to take what you're saying and make sense of it and be able to grapple with it, to be able to look at the passage of scripture that you're teaching through and to be able to understand it and then to apply it. And so all of the things you're doing is helping to make sense of that, help make it come alive, to show them what it looks like when they live it out, to give them all the tools that they need to do what the scriptures teach. And if they can't understand what you're saying, then it makes it impossible. And so what you want to make sure you do is you want to almost over-communicate, over-articulate, and finish your words and finish your sentences so that you're speaking in complete sentences and complete words. You're not cutting things off and moving around, just, or mumbling through. This is one of the things that I did. I had no idea that I was doing this prior to my program in college where we worked on communication and speaking. I didn't have good diction, but I could understand myself. I thought that I was being clear, but I was speaking with my mouth basically closed. And so I'd mumble through things and I would, and I thought I understood what I was saying, but I didn't know that no one else did. And so I had to open up my mouth and start speaking with more clarity. And so you just want to make sure, and you have to contextualize this to your environment and to your people and make sure that you're speaking in a way that they understand. That's important too. But by and large, you've got to make sure that you're finishing your words, you're articulating your words, you're opening your mouth, you're speaking, you're letting air in and letting air out, like just good practical speaking technique. And when you lack that, you don't realize how much of a distraction it could be just because someone goes, what did he say? I don't know. Okay, I guess I'm tuning out, right? So those are the 5 most common physical distractions of preachers. Some of them have to do with your speech, some of them have to do with your movement or behavior, but they all kind of add up. And if we can just avoid those, are we going to have perfect sermons? No. But are we going to have better sermons that are more clearly articulated and eliminate distractions that take away from what we're trying to do? Yeah, and that's really all I wanted to do through this. And so some of you are like, hey, I want some more information. I'd like to be able to prepare my sermons with more clarity and be able to build messages that work and that communicate with people in a way that is life-changing. If that's your situation, I have something just for you. If you go to preachingdonkey.com/21 days, this is the 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. It's just a little PDF that I put together. It's a free gift to you that will walk you through a 3-week process of preparing your sermons, everything from how to study with more clarity and effectiveness to how to build an outline that's irresistible, that takes people on an irresistible journey, and then how to make your sermon come alive with illustrations and application. So definitely check that out. It's link to it is in the description. You can go to preachingdonkey.com/21 days, and we'll see you here on the channel next time.